right, good morning, gentlemen. It's been a long week. It's a Thursday. Welcome to the Explicit Measures Podcast. Seth, Tommy, welcome.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. I thank you for
Mike.
telling me what day it was too.
You know what?
'Cause
It's one of those
It's
weeks.
one of those weeks that. Cool. Thursday. All right.
All right, yeah,
It's a
that's
day.
4 days from Monday. 1 day from Friday.
All right.
Yes, exactly.
Is your voice coming back, Tommy?
It's beginning to. Yesterday was probably the worst day. So I was like, oh, not 2 podcasts in a row. And yesterday I sounded bad. Every call I was on, everyone's like, are you okay? Like, yeah, I just
Party
I
too
drank
hard.
with a bunch of people from Iowa. Yeah. So
Got really
That's
sick.
what- yeah. Oh man.
Awesome. So let's jump in some topic today. So topic for today is really around, and we were talking before we started recording here. I think this is going to be a good topic. It's all around custom visuals, use it or lose it. So just general topics around using custom visuals, where they fit in the spectrum of your building Power Reports, and just in general, how does this change how you build reports, or what are your general thoughts on some of the custom visuals? Tommy, kick us off. Give us some initial thoughts on your custom visuals, or actually maybe do us a favor first, right? For people who don't use custom visuals very often, maybe just give us a little overview of what a custom visual is.
So custom visual and Power BI are community created visuals. Microsoft has an entire SDK or a framework that you can build a custom visual, submit it to the app source, or you can put it on GitHub and install it. But it basically allows a developer and then the user to add that to Power BI and do the same things you would in a normal visual. Add your columns, your metrics, the formatting. So things that are not available in your standard visuals. Developers have been doing this really since Power BI has been out. I think custom visuals also were around when Power BI was released in 2015.
Yeah, I think they were very early.
Been a long time.
Yeah, they've been out for a very long time. It's been a little bit of a rough road, I would say, for custom visuals. I remember initially when they came out, there was some challenge around the team that developed them was kind of developing, maybe not in a vacuum, but they were just at a different pace at which desktop was doing. And I remember trying to use custom visuals initially. I couldn't get the code to work. The code examples that were out there were just difficult for me to even get started with. So that has since been improved, and there's the library of things that you have to work with custom visuals has gotten much better, much richer, but they've always been lagging a little bit behind what desktop can do, right? So there's like drill through and tooltips. Some of those SDK related things were not there initially, but now there are more and more of those features to make them act or give you the functionality of standard visuals is now increasingly being added.
Yeah, and to be fair, right? I mean, there's a lot of code that goes into creating a custom visual that works within Power BI, right? So the verification and certification, right? Yeah, that's one of the things that
was added.
You can easily see now is which one of these visuals has a Microsoft certification on it, where that code is validated and is not going to harm your computer or things like that. In general, I've never heard of a custom visual that a non-certified that did anything. But be cognizant you're downloading and using something in your report that is third-party code. The other thing I'm going to say to Tommy is I like in quotes community nowadays. Because there are certainly businesses, right, that are leveraging custom visuals as a way to monetize some really fantastic custom visuals. But there's a good mix of people that are building community visuals for free versus paid things in there as well.
So custom visuals over the years, this is going to be a heart-to-heart to my conversation with custom visuals and the relationship.
We can give you hugs, Tommy.
Well, honestly, it's more like if the only way I could think about it, because I've never really, until we've had the conversations, not really talked to anyone else about the evolution or what custom visuals were and the expectation that they were going to be when they came out to where they are now.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like your best friend's been dating someone for a long time and they asked you, so what do you think? And you're basically like, well, it started out great. You guys bicker too much, and sometimes I don't think you guys understand each other. So, and like, why haven't you said anything? It's
You
like,
should get
never
married.
asked. Yeah, no, that's the only way I can think about this is you guys had a great start, a lot of sparks, but sometimes you guys just don't understand each other. And that's the only way I can think about this conversation is
That's a
let's really
great
talk
analogy.
about, because not that that's exact analogy is true, but it's more or less
Oh, wow.
that expectation of when custom visuals first came out, when they had that dedicated web page,
Yep.
which personally I loved. And there were maybe 50 custom visual or even less than that.
Yep.
But they're all very targeted and you could easily find what you wanted. Now there's 350 custom visuals and there's 7 categories to filter them on.
Yep.
Which is not really your best way, especially when you're trying to look for a visual in general. Usually you're not just browsing the app source. And if you are wasting time like I did yesterday.
Well, it's also challenging too to like know which ones are good ones unless you try them. So that's another. Right. It's hard to keep up on top of 350 of them and be able to say, based on a couple screenshots, does this look like it will meet my needs? And so I find when I need to go down a custom visual route, it's a rabbit hole a little bit for me. I'm spending some good time. I'll try 4 or 5 visuals. And then usually if I look at my report after I'm done, I've got like 3 or 4 visuals kind of already logged into the report, and I have to go back and remember to remove them so they're not adding overhead to the report. But I would agree with you 100%. And that's a very interesting analogy because I feel like that's very much, it was a very new feature. I think it serves a great purpose. And what I feel like here is there are things people will ask you for. And partly my interaction with custom visuals have been, I don't usually go to them unless someone asks me for something complex or wants me to mimic something that has already been built somewhere else. So, I want it to look exactly like this, and the standard visuals don't get me where I'm at. And so that's when I'm starting to look at like, and I err on the side of like Charticulator as a custom visual more so than I would go find my own custom visual, because I really do need to have like the shapes on the page a certain way, the numbers, the text a certain way that I want to have it oriented on the page. I don't really want the ability to have like someone can't dream up my idea of the visual that I need typically.
I'm going to back up 1 second before we devolve into an area I think we're going to go to.
Yeah.
Or devolve or shift.
Shift.
I think
is idea for custom visuals, which would be, use something like the Power BI visuals reference, like SQL BI came up with to like have whoever's generating the custom visual link it to one of those specific areas. Because if you think about when you're going out to use a custom visual, it is for a specific use case that you're not really seeing, but you have a problem. And where does that fit into which visual you should be choosing? And it is hard to navigate and find the right one or its capabilities. And you might have a custom visual that like branches or meets the needs of answering questions around 2 or 3 different types of visuals.
Right.
But like Mike, maybe post a reference, in the chat as far as
Got it. Yep.
what I'm kind of talking about. But the, comparisons, change over time, ranking, spatial, like answer those types of questions in a visual format, and then bring up the list of all of the custom visuals that would meet that need.
That's actually a good point, because I think I actually gave this exact feedback back to Microsoft. They were soliciting for like, hey, what can we do better? And I was like, use this. Your categories are not intuitive. Like, use these as the categories, because that's what I'm, as I'm visual building, I know that I'm looking for a comparison over time or a change over, like, these are the categories I would expect to see listed when I start filtering on visuals. Totally makes sense to me.
Do you know what the top category is out of the 7?
Oh boy, what? I don't
Analytics.
know. So generic.
That's intuitive. Yeah,
so generic.
Seriously.
Everything.
All of
Everything. And
Is
then the
that
next
because
one,
is that
yeah,
because it's like in app, like App Source still kind of thing, or is it these are
it.
just all Power BI in the Power BI visuals area, analytics?
So I have Gil Review's custom Visual Explorer tool,
I was just gonna
and
get you the link for that because
yeah,
it's super helpful.
yeah, and I actually worked with Gil because I bought it so I can get the desktop file, and I basically create a way so you can actually connect to the categories,
Mhm.
and that didn't help
Okay.
me at all because it was like analytics out of 350 custom visuals, 317 of them are uh, analytics category, and visual can have more than one category. The next one's
Mhm.
KPI.
Yeah.
Okay. So it doesn't really, I think you're right on point, Seth, where it's not so much a category, but what purpose will this serve? Because when I'm going to look for a visual and called custom or called standard, it doesn't matter. There's something you're trying to manifest. There's something there's an objective that you have in mind. And that's what makes it so hard to find and then apply any a custom visual, because you don't know just by, to Mike's point, just by looking at a screenshot, will this serve the purpose that I'm looking for, my objective here?
This is also very interesting. Gil actually provides you a ranking on this,
Mhm.
and I put the web page where you can go see the custom visuals report, which I find very helpful. And another couple items here I'll point out for this tool specifically is it gives you a PBI Viz link, go
Mhm.
download just the visualization, as well as I think in the older versions he actually had
Yeah,
a link
PBIX.
to the sample file, a PBIX file, which I don't think I see
It's
anymore.
not available anymore.
And but I believe on App Source you should be able to download all of the visuals with a sample. That was my problem. Once you
Mhm.
download a custom visual, the visual designer has this language of how he wants to put things on a page.
Mhm.
I don't understand it initially, and so
Yeah.
sometimes I couldn't even have the right data on my report to make the visual work, and it was just
Yeah.
complicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
For our podcast listeners, Gil's stuff is over on his website, datachant.com. And then our other link that we're pasting in YouTube is SQL BI, where the other visual references as well.
Yeah, both of them are out there. Interesting. So I want to just talk about just briefly around. So when do I start thinking about using custom visuals, and what is some of the power of some of this is? I think when you have particularly like an external facing or you're highly stylizing things, there are the standard visuals get you a kind of cover the bases, right?
Mhm.
So Microsoft has clearly touted they want a PowerPoint for data to be Power BI. So it's the windows, the pane, the stuff that you kind of get out of the box. That's kind of feels like a PowerPoint type scenario. I totally disagree with this. I do not like the analogy of PowerPoint for data because I'm just not a big fan of PowerPoint. But I get where they're going with it, and they want it to be accessible to very um, Microsoft Office-based tools user bases, right? That feels very common to them. However, I feel like this custom visuals area, if you have custom dev work or you have developers in your team that know JavaScript or know how to code or TypeScript, I guess that's what you would write most of these out as. These guys can write some incredible things. You can do animations. You can do things in these visuals that are really highly interactive. And I would say one of the reasons why you want to go down the custom visuals route is you have a very specific need for a report. However, you want to leverage the engine of analysis services. So to me, there's a lot of framework pieces here that are put in place for you to make it easy for you to make a custom visual. Like you can get pages, you can get navigation elements like buttons and things. You can get bookmarks and showing hiding stuff. If you kind of take all those features and then asked a dev to build all of this, and just imagine for basic example, I have two visuals, and when I click one, the other visual filters. That interactivity, I'd say, is fairly challenging for a developer to build that into their custom application or whatever you're doing. So if you're embedding Power BI reports into an application, to me, it makes a lot of sense to not have to lift, let's say, 75% of the framework of Power BI and allow the developers to work on 25%, which is just a single visual or a portions of visuals to make it work proficient for you.
But Mike, I mean, how many people, one, either have that development experience, or two, have access to a dev to do something targeted, not necessarily one-off for continuing projects, but usually it's for a given report. So
Agreed.
the amount of time to develop, especially if you don't have that background and your job is not to develop custom visuals, your job is to build reports. I think that's an ideal state, but I would say probably for 90% of people who are Power BI authors, that's just not possible.
Uh,
That's not an
I'd agree.
actual,
Yeah,
solution.
and I think it's two different topics, right? One is custom, right? Custom visual or custom visual development, by a developer versus custom visuals in the marketplace that somebody's using for a particular reason. Regardless of those, I think in the case where we're looking in the marketplace for a custom visual, the not downside is, but like technically you're only going to stick one of those on a page,
Right.
right?
Correct.
Because those don't mix and match. They're
Yeah.
built in completely different ways, and it's not like you're going to just be able to like bop everything on the page and have it look cohesive.
Yep. Agreed.
So for common consistent experience, it's not. It's probably a fit for purpose visual that does something really unique that isn't out there by default.
You're dead on, Seth, because a lot of these custom visuals, and some of them are great. I personally use specifically like 3 or 4, depending. And especially the advanced analytics ones, like the histogram chart.
Yep.
Some of the advanced scatter charts, the Perio chart, just because those aren't available in Power BI. They're pretty basic.
Is the histogram from the Microsoft? That's the one made by Microsoft.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And the one they made probably in 2016.
It's the lowest rated one. Yep, that's the one you're using.
It's the lowest
No,
rated one.
It's got a ranking of 132. I'm not sure what the ranking Gil has is actually related to ratings or not, but
it's
maybe
a formula between ratings and the number of reviews.
Okay, so it's on the lowest end of the rank.
I'm not concerned with that because there's not.
Tommy, good job. You've picked the worst visual of all the visuals to put in your reports. Nice work on that one.
No problem. No problem. It's amazing that we don't have a histogram to start with, but
I would agree with that.
But those types of needs, and again,
yeah.
So I think there's 2 parts of this. I want to make sure I focus on what Seth was saying. So there's a few visuals I use, and they're ones that are kind of available in other applications, like Excel has, I think, in his histogram chart.
Hmm.
And then the other thing too is you're right. So there's not a uniform style. If one developer is creating a certain custom visual and another person is, the styles look completely off. So even if you have one custom visual, it stands out.
Yep.
And so you can't add multiple custom visuals because then you just have a really wonky report. So
agreed. I've done a little bit of, so there's actually a spectrum of custom visuals too, right? So let's talk about like the general landscape of custom visuals. You have built-in visuals from desktop. Then I would say you'd have a layer more custom than that would be the custom visuals from app source. So that's kind of like your next layer. And then you have tools like Charticulator, which is a custom visual, but it gives you a framework to build visual elements and bind data to them. So that's more custom. So Tommy, to your point earlier when you were saying like, I don't think we're going to have a custom developer come in and build a custom visual. I'd agree with you. I think that is a 5 to 10% case when you're going to have developers help you build it. But my point there was, it would be much more worth our time when we need to go down the full custom route to hire a developer to do this versus going to build all this stuff net new in some sort of custom application. So like I think there's a value add there. And then once we leave Charticulator, then we start walking into like, okay, is it an R visual? So you're writing R script inside an R visual that's on the page. So you basically write R, put it inside the visual from Power BI desktop that is R or Python. So this gives you, when you move into that realm, you're now writing straight up code, but now you have a visual language representation of, I'm gonna basically, it's a representative language. You're not writing every single line of code. You're representing a bar chart with a framework that's already been developed for you. This is also where I'll put in the project from Daniel Marsh Patrick called Deneb, which is really, really interesting and super relevant in this system, right? I'm writing the entire visual from scratch I'm using the libraries that Microsoft's provided to you. So I think that's our landscape here. And I would probably err on the side of most people should be playing with Charticulator and some of the custom visuals from the store.
So one thing I will say is I think there's two other layers between standard visuals and then Charticulator. I think there's some of the Microsoft built custom visuals.
Okay.
That are, even though they're not really focused or updated on a frequent basis,
Yep.
they're useful. And then there's that the companies building those custom visuals. I think XViz is one. So there's kind of like the business side of it too.
XViz and then Mac Software, MAQ.
Yeah, Mac Software kind of thing. And I think those are two very separate cases where like Mac and XViz, they're building not necessarily different visuals. They're just like enhancing a bar chart. They're enhancing a line chart. It's like
they've got everything. Like they've basically built all visuals all over again. Like you can, like if talking to your point earlier, like if you want style, you can buy. I think Mac Software has like all the visuals you would ever need, and it's all styled the similar way. Or XViz the same way. If you buy their package, you can get all the visuals. But this is the rub for me. I'm getting desktop. I can literally get desktop for free. I don't want to be paying extra money or a monthly fee to use visuals in my reports. I just feel like that's to me. That's just, there's something that rubs me the wrong way there.
Yeah, in retrospect, I almost wish they would have called it something different, because
that's a good point.
The custom visuals that you're going to use internally to serve the purpose of solving a data problem that you just can't represent well in a default is what the marketplace solves, right? Or it was an area where you allowed community to enhance the product, which Microsoft does a lot. But it's when you throw custom on it, it's hard to differentiate like that, which is exactly what those things are, is to help solve data problems. And then also make the jump into like Charticulator, which is much more about opening the spectrum way wider in also fully customizing the way you want it to look, not just the things it does. Because that, like when obviously a lot of customer facing embedded reporting, custom means I can build whatever I want, and that's just not the case.
Right.
Agreed.
It's amazing. I don't want to backtrack, but it's amazing when custom visuals first came out. I felt like I used them a lot more than I do now. I did a quick poll on Twitter yesterday, just asking people,
this is good,
what percentage of your reports or pages use a custom visual? 62% of people said that less than 5% of their reports use any custom visual at all, which to me is kind of, I want to say surprising, because how much is Microsoft? They promote the custom visuals in their monthly blogs, but it's really not surprising. But it is incredible, especially with how many custom visuals there are.
So just to follow up on that then, right? What are some recommendations? I mean, we had one. Are there any others that we would say, hey, Microsoft, like you're not getting usage because people can't find it, right? So like put it in a platform of, pick what problem you're trying to solve. Are there other reasons why you think there's challenges around people not utilizing that more?
Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, I totally agree with this. I think there's a couple big challenges. One of the challenges I think that I think is trying to be addressed already, and which I think is a good direction, is when I get to a custom visual from the store, it's just difficult to understand how to use it. There's not enough documentation there. And again, it's on the developer to kind of illuminate how to use the visual. So like, great, you made a custom visual, you built it, you understand it. But some of these visuals that you're getting to use are like one or two developers. It's not a whole full team of people to kind of build it and market it and then document it. It's just kind of out there. So I think that's getting better, because the ones that are getting usage are getting that level of support. What I would say for oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that's a really good point, because if you like, there is the blurb, right, and most of them have links of like how to use it.
Yep.
But in translating development,
yes,
right.
Yep.
there are different development teams and how they went about solving the problem in every
Right.
single one of these.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's a perfect point, because usually for those, and sometimes those are really, really neat visuals, but they had a purpose in mind
Yes.
with a certain model and the way the data structured in a certain way. So this has happened to me probably more times than I wish, where you'd see a visual go, that looks great. You download the sample file, and the data you just can't get. It just can't fit, because
exactly.
Yeah.
but it makes sense though too. They had an objective in mind, and they're not thinking of every use case.
Yes.
The standard visuals in Power BI are standard for a reason. They
Yes.
didn't invent the bar chart.
Exactly.
You can Google
What?
right? Yeah, I didn't. Excel was the first person to create it, right? But so it's like, even like what I want to use more, but I just find it so hard, like the Power KPI and the Power KPI matrix, because I'm trying to focus more on KPIs, but even those were kind of built with a specific scenario in mind.
Yeah. So what I will say here is,
Yeah.
where Microsoft I totally agree with your point, Tommy, and I think there's like a lot of room for improvement here. Where I think Microsoft missed the boat was, there is this level of, let's call it pro code, that's happening, and it's already happening in the visualization space. And I think they tried to address it by adding the R visual and the Python visual. I think those were a good step, because those two languages actually have an entire library of things that you can use for visuals. One of the things I've discovered, and this is with Daniel Marsh's kind of investigation into this, and he says a funny way he did not know how to write custom visuals, and then he calls it hate learned them, because he didn't want to do it. He said, I need to learn how to do custom visuals, and so with lots of resistance, he forced himself to learn how to build custom visuals, and because of this, he can now make amazing visuals. But in his research in doing this, he found Vega, which is a visualization grammar. It's an entirely open source project. People all over the world contribute to it, and the idea is, it's a language of code, again JSON, that you can write against this programming language, and describes for you how to build a chart. You can add calculations. You can add very crazy lines between different things. I mean, it is made in a way that is ultra flexible, so you really can build any kind of visual the way you want. And I think I would like to have seen Microsoft do some more investment in something like this, where I can incorporate, we have some standard visuals, but maybe those standard visuals are already kind of pre-built on top of one of these infrastructures that is easier to use, simpler to leverage. And then instead of building, and my opinion here is, they built a bunch of visuals that are starting from scratch. Their team came out and built, this is how we're going to framework these visuals. And I think, had we done a little bit more work around, let's use Vega as the basis for some of these visuals, or again, some of it's coming out of D3.js. Let's extend D3.js and add features to it that we could just write that natively inside our visuals. So I think there needed to be a bit more of a pro code story that came with just general visuals, right? Open source me the bar chart. Let the community do a little bit more work around adding features and fixing things on it that are just missing. There's a lot of, we're going to talk about this anyways. We might as well get to it now. But like the Matrix visual is not there yet. And that's
a very nice way of saying that.
It's not there yet. And so I look at Excel, and I like the way the matrix works in Excel. I think that works really well. Tables work really well in Excel. I want to be able to filter a table by column. I can't do that in the visual today. And those are things like I feel like are very core to what that needs to be doing.
And guess what? All the users want tables too.
Yes, exactly.
When you say the matrix isn't there, are you specifically talking around the one thing that pains me, which is when I explode a hierarchy, I can't scroll to the right. So if I have a visual size that is 90% of the screen space, I can't look at the actual columns of data. That horrible experience.
Yeah, that's one that just boggles my mind. Like,
just want to make sure we're on the same page there.
And then you've got to chop all the words, and so the ellipsis shows up for all the words of the columns that have been concatenated. And to me,
you have to be so precise expanding that plus button.
Well, and this is why I really encourage people not to start dropping tables into reports, because one, they're slow. They're slow as lead. Like it's just really slow to get those things to render. When you have performance problems, I feel like most of my performance problems come from tables. When something's going awry, it's because I'm
Sure.
bringing a bunch of flat data, a lot of text, whatever that is, into one large table, and I feel like those are my pain points. So I prefer like there's got to be a better way of doing them.
So with from the matrix to the table, and I think we talked about Charticulator too. Like, where do we go from here? Can you create a table on Charticulator?
You cannot. So that's one that's a
Ooh.
weakness there. So there is another visual that I'm aware of. So if you think about a table, right? Tables are very common. There, like even just thinking like the internet, there is a whole HTML structure around building tables, and part of the reason why I think tables are lacking is there's a lot to style on a table. You can have borders around them. You can have headers on them. There's a lot of features that go along with table design. If you look at Excel, there's like tons of options to drop onto a table, and they've built a whole styling section for tables just because there are so many options for tables. They're trying to pre define what a table could look like for you in Excel. I think we need more of that kind of stuff inside Power BI, and I think the one visual that I'm aware of is Daniel Marsh Patrick built another one called I think it's called the custom HTML one, and I've seen a newer version. I don't know if he's already released it yet, but it's basically where you define the HTML and the CSS for your visual independently of the data. So if you think about like the data, like you can make a table of data, right? Power BI will render it, and then you can literally write HTML code that does something for you that will allow you to have a table rendered. So you can provide a generic pattern. Here's my table, here's my row, and the visual will automatically render that HTML for you and then make a table for you in that shape. So there's some really interesting stuff that he's doing there, and I really like that visual for stylizing your tables, but it doesn't give you a drop-down menu for a column to filter it.
What you just said just now, I think, is why we started this podcast in the first place.
Because I'm so far out in left field. I'm literally in the middle of the desert, just wandering around now.
It's because you're saying this. I'm hearing you. I understand, but we're all thinking there's got to be a better way.
I know.
This is so, and yeah, from the Charticulator to our tables, it's tough right now.
I would agree with
and
that.
I don't want to just sound negative about that, but I think I love what you're doing with Charticulator, Mike. It's a shame right now that Microsoft hasn't released more samples and documentation around it.
Yep.
Because you've really been the source for it.
I'm trying to toot the horn as much as I can. Like Charticulator solves so many problems, and it really competes with Tableau in that space. Nothing else I've seen does it.
That is an entire topic for another day.
It is,
for sure. As well as another one that I think branches off of this one, which is that I want to talk more about, which is internal Power BI for internal use versus external.
Ooh.
There's this topic covers I think one of the pain points of external uses. My pain point.
Yeah. Yes. Well, so let's ask the question. So Tommy, you said you did the survey on Twitter, and less than 5% of people are using custom visuals.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to open the question up, Seth and Tommy.
Sure.
If you're building reports for external clients, do you think you see more custom visuals in external facing reports, or you do see more custom visuals in internal facing reports, or is it equal?
By custom visual, I would say you're going to see more Charticulator type stuff in external than you would around some of the things that you may use within just Marketplace, just in general.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you're already having a developer work. If you're doing something external, odds are you already have either you're the person or you're working with someone who has that development experience. So it's already being rendered in a certain way. The biggest thing with any custom visual is if I can solve that problem with the bar chart, why do I need a custom visual? But if you're rendering in a certain way and If you're already
Well,
doing something,
if you're
yeah,
looking for a custom visual, I assume the bar chart doesn't solve the problem for you.
yeah.
In the
Well,
fancy way that
yeah,
somebody wants to see it, because ultimately, I mean, custom visuals, like, they're custom because they do a very niche thing, right? Or a
well,
specific
should.
thing in a way that that we can't get out of the default, that an end user is saying it has to do this, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Here's a random question right at the end here. Would you consider the natural natural language Q&A visuals custom visuals?
Ooh,
I would not.
I'd say that's built in. I would not call it a custom visual, but I don't like the experience of it. I don't think I use it at all ever. Like,
So they're the same.
Nope. Yeah.
from a usage standpoint, it's used as much as my custom visuals, which is not at all. And
Right.
I have a hard time. It's such a cool feature to demo. If you're demoing Power BI and you start typing in stuff, it's great because you can stumble your way through total sales by category in a bar, and it does it, and you're like, wow, that's amazing. But like, there's a whole lot of other stuff that you like can try. Literally take like 30 minutes and try and build an entire report by using the Q&A, and just try and put 3 or 4 visuals on a page using Q&A, and you're like,
I told you I will do this.
what
someday.
the heck?
You're right.
We can have another podcast about my trials and tribulations of building a natural Q&A custom question and answer only report and model.
Exactly.
So I cannot wait for that episode.
Unless somebody else wants to do it before me. So audience, like, I'd love to see if somebody has built one of these.
Yeah.
With success.
I agree. So let me propose a final question for you guys, and I think to end on a more positive note, so to speak. Let's say you got hired by Microsoft for the next 2 years. They gave you an unlimited budget to improve the custom visual experience for pro users and for dev. What are you doing?
Where do you spend your money?
Where are you spending your money?
Ooh, this is good.
Should have put that in the chat.
Okay.
List yesterday.
So my building. I'm assuming that this budget goes towards custom visuals that produce data outputs that are not.
You can support the community. You can hire developers. Or internally.
So
is it?
Can I frame it? I want to change your question slightly because this is a little too open to me. I feel like let's just imagine you have $100, right? $100 can buy you whatever you want, right? So take that $100 and tell me how you would spend it on improving. Like, I like your idea. There's a finite amount of money here, but like we've got to choose something. So take your $100 and apply it to custom visuals. What do you apply your $100 to, and like how much of it? Right? Is it $50 towards something? Is it like $10 towards something? Like, where do you invest your time to make it better? So does that help frame I like that.
Perfect.
Okay. So because I changed your question, I'll start off.
Okay.
So
to frame it into your own question. Let me answer.
I don't like your question. I'm actually going to change it to make it my own, and then I'll use my own question to answer. I'll answer my own question.
There's a much better.
I didn't say that.
That's a great way if you don't understand what I think you're saying. It's like, I think we need to reframe the question so I can answer it.
I don't like how you said that. Let me help you.
Love it. So if I had $100, I would probably spend a good portion of it. I would probably, $25 to maybe $50 of that. I would go and I would spend it on improving tables and matrices. I think when you look at a table and or matrix, it should somewhat act like a slicer, but it should somewhat also act like a table and matrix does in Excel. And I think I'd like to see just the capability of that whole 2 visuals really ramp up and take a lot of cues from what Excel's doing in that space and make it work more like Excel. I think because that's what I'm familiar with. That's where it came from. Yeah. I love pivot tables. They're awesome. That's something that people are naturally going to want. So improving the performance of them, making them have the right filters per column, letting me have the control of, do I scroll beyond the first couple columns? Can we have a more intuitive way of how we show that initial portion of the data and the data that goes behind it? What does that look like? Just some stuff in there in general. So that's where I would probably put my first, let's call it $50.
Well, you know where they're going with it.
Well,
it's not Excel. I mean, paginated.
True.
custom visual, right? Does that solve your problem, Mike?
Oh, that's a good point.
No.
I don't know, man. Well, when you get again, this is the argument. This is a great point. By the time I'm hitting a table of information, I don't think you really want a table anymore. I think you've removed yourself from where the insights are. And if it's a table with like 5 rows, 10 rows, okay, maybe you need the table. You want to see the data listed out. But beyond that, if you need a table with 100,000 rows of data, there's nothing actionable on that, other than you're going to scroll the whole table and export it. Tommy, what do people do when they get to that level?
No, because they're trying to look for certain recs. They're at the table point because they've already done some filters, and they're trying to either from the matrix point of view, they're at least trying to see an easier way to digest multiple values like transactions, sales, and profit. That's hard to do in one visual.
It's hard to do in a table. How do you correlate different rows?
So we're gonna there's another podcast. Tables and matrices. Yes. But I'm gonna say one thing, right? If that is where you're almost sticking 50% of your budget, it blows my mind. And maybe this is a naive statement because of analysis services and DAX and all the complexity of what we do. Why is it so difficult to just say, give me the first 1,000 rows? Like if performance is a problem and you're gonna let me sort on the column and I can group things and build things in DAX, why is it so difficult to just say, give me the first 1,000 rows? Because the user is not going to scroll through 1,000 rows.
Agreed.
It's going to be
filtered
10,
down the data.
But I'm going to kill my report.
Yes.
Or try to create some complex DAX measure to only choose this thing in the filter context of these things that are on every single page.
Yep.
Every single page.
Yep.
Agreed.
Instead, it's I'm gonna.
Look at the. I agree with you 100%. But so 2 things. I disagree with Tommy, and then I agree with Seth. Yes, because
it's the same thing.
But I disagree with the fact that you need the table there. So like if you're trying to find correlate, so when you get to a table, when we hit to the table, I'm firmly convinced, and maybe we have to talk about this more to convince me otherwise. But by the time we hit the table, we have filtered down the data. We've gotten to what we think we need, and the whole reason is we're going to export it to Excel and go use it somewhere else. Because if you're trying to present correlations between different data points and see all those together, all that stuff could be represented as if it was some sort of chart or graphic or something.
Yeah, yes and no, right? Because like a matrix, right? Like you could be showing a percentage on an XY of particular rows and columns, right? There are use cases where you would still need to use it, but at the same time, anyway.
And we're gonna go down a dark road with this.
All right.
The last thing I'll say,
let's go through the last one. The last 25%, I would throw at Charticulator, and the other 25%, I would throw at just improving the SDK for custom visuals, or let's try and use something like a Vega or Vega Lite, build some custom visuals that allow you to half code the visual language without having to do everything from scratch. That's where I would spend my money. I guess you guys should do yours too.
All right, thanks guys for joining. We'll see you Tuesday. Yeah. So Mike, Seth, do you want to go or I can?
Sure. I mean, just shoot from the hip, just because it's pain points. I would spend 80% of my money in usability of the things that exist, along with allowing me to customize them visually out of the default. Hands down, like that is where my largest problem is right now.
So more features, like more properties.
I mean, if you think about the use cases, like we do a lot of external facing application development, right? And I'm trying to have Power BI be a centerpiece of that, because of the framework underneath, right? Because of the data access layers and things like that, and the absolute killer is I can't format and shape things the way I would need to meet the needs of an application. Like the fact that fonts don't match, XY axis is still ARIEL.
And you can't add custom fonts. Like you can't get a custom font yet. That would be a big win.
I have different font selections between the different default behaviors of objects in the page. Like they just haven't invested time there. So no, let me refactor. 95% of my money go there. and 5%, into advancements of showing me data in a different way.
I
Interesting.
like that. So I'm putting $45 into building almost like an external tool, just like they built. You can generate a theme or create a theme in Power BI, but I'm creating a UI to create a custom visual. Whether you take a bar chart and it pops out a new window and you can edit the properties, you can write the underlying code, or you can do things in an interface. So in
Interesting.
allow use, yeah. So I'm putting 40, and again that would be we'll call it the citizen developer, so to speak. But
Is that another window, or can I
it's
get that in a
definitely a
fly
window
out?
because it's
No,
not
no,
going to be
it's got to be another panel.
It's
It's
Yeah,
another
that's what I
panel.
mean. Is it a panel?
Just
Is it a
add one more
panel?
Well,
panel
I
to
can't-
the right hand side, because then you need like a 75-inch widescreen monitor so you can get all the panels on the same
Well,
screen.
change it $95 to Windows. Yeah. So, oh man, that's so true. I'll sometimes open 2 files of the same report just to do something. And that, anyways, that's another topic. So, so I'm putting $45 into building or developing some SDK where people can build a UI to customize a visual or to put to modify properties.
Yep.
Without doing, pro code.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I'm putting, so that's 45. So I'm gonna put
You're at 90.
25. Yeah. Yeah, if I could do math, this will really show.
Tommy, you just spent
and
$300.
and the MVP is taken away immediately. I'm putting $25 into the community and for people to write samples,
Okay.
documentation.
Ooh, I like it.
Whether it's internal at Microsoft, or I'm empowering others to showcase the different visuals, like Charticulator.
Yep.
Build it. Someone needs to build a gallery for this. Someone needs to be writing about this. We need a Charticulator champion. Here's all the use cases.
I'm doing
Right?
it.
They're not paying.
I know they're not paying me, but
But-
I'm doing it
right, but-
because I think it needs to be there. It needs to be there. It's so strong. Yeah.
Right. So basically having a team and that reaches out to the community, just like they've been doing with the external tools.
Agreed.
So that's $25.
Yeah, you've up to 70, Tommy. You're up to 70 right now.
No,
It's hard to talk and do math at the same time. I get it.
I know. Good thing that's not my job. Oh,
Wait.
so I'm going to put $20 into the SDK, the pro code. So really developing that. So again, there's the no code or the GUI.
Yep.
And then there's going to be a much more investment on what the capabilities are for developing a custom visual.
Yep.
And then I'm putting $10 into the discoverability of custom visuals and taking it out of the app stores and really focusing on a way to structure that data. So again, just like SQL BI did, where it's like, I'm trying to look for trending. Here's the use cases for it.
Yeah.
So that discoverability side, and easily explore a visual without having to download it and then put data into it. So that the interactivity of
I like that.
browsing.
Require every visual, every custom visual has to have a Power BI embedded, published to web that is out there. Like give me a template. Here is the data that I'm using. Here's the visual that I have, and here's the columns and like how they fit. Like just let me see it.
Yes, and you can't use your own data of 4 columns and 3 rows where everything's aggregated already.
I like that.
And that, folks, is the difference between someone who has a very well thought out answer like Tommy, and someone like me who is struggling with one thing in very particular.
Very narrow use case. Very narrow use case.
Oh man.
Amazing.
Well, at least we
Good
ended on a
talk
positive
today, guys.
note.
It was
Yeah,
good.
this was good.
I think this was good. I think this is definitely a neat topic here. Custom visuals are super sweet. I think they definitely serve their purpose in various areas. And again, the underlining framework, the analysis services, the desktop, the publishing of reports, and how all of that's managed for you is second to none. I still think that's just super solid. And I think over time, we're going to see the custom visuals improve, get better, and then we'll be able to leverage more of them inside desktop. And I think there's going to be the community is so innovative. They're going to find ways to solve these problems. And again, I can't rag on it enough. Daniel Marsh's Deneb project needs to be a custom visual.
Well, I'll go there, Mike. All right, we'll check it out.
By the way, Didier Turin just said Power FX. Yes, that would be. Yeah. So that would.
That's a whole nother ball of wax.
But that's perfect. Anyways, yes.
It's another good
Sorry
one.
about that. That got me excited.
All right. So Tommy, where can you find the podcast?
You can find the podcast on anywhere podcasts are available: Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Overcast. Episodes come out the day we do the live stream. If you're listening on one of the podcast platforms and you cannot see our wonderful faces right now, and you want to join in the conversation, you can do so every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central Time. Go to the PowerBI.Tips channel.
Yep.
And you can always find the link there.
We'll be there. Thank you all for listening. We appreciate it. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're trying to grow the audience for this a bit more. Thank you all for listening and participating, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks, guys.